A rainstorm pours over the African savanna. A two-legged creature crouches under a tree, soaked and tense, eyes darting around, as if any patch of grass could suddenly sprout fangs and claws. This is Homo habilis, the first species of the genus Homo. No fire, no shelter, no real weapons, only broken stones, guttural sounds, and the raw instinct to survive. They weren't hunters, they were prey. Lions hunted by night, leopards stalked from the tall grass. Crocodiles lay in ambush by the stream. Every step they took was a gamble with death. Height, just over 1 meter. Weight, less than 40 kilograms. Weak muscles, brittle bones, dull teeth, slow speed. Compared to any predator, they lost. But they had something no other creature possessed: the ability to learn and to remember. They learned how to hide, to share safe spots under trees, to remember which caves housed venomous snakes, to recognize predator tracks, to choose non-toxic routes during dry seasons. They survived, not because they were strong, but because they were clever. For nearly 1 million years, humans existed by avoiding everything stronger than themselves. Until one day, someone stopped running. Around 1.9 million years ago, another creature emerged. Taller, stronger, toolmaker, organized. A real hunter. Its name was Homo erectus, upright man. And from that moment on, humanity began to fight back. In the next part, you'll discover why a ridiculed discovery in Indonesia became one of the greatest turning points in modern archaeology. Part 2. The discovery that shook science. A bearded man in a mud-stained long-sleeved shirt kneels in the Javanese jungle, hands trembling as he holds a dull-colored fragment of skull freshly dug from the earth. The year is 1891. Eugène Dubois, a Dutch anatomist, has abandoned his clinic to pursue something outrageous: the search for the ape man who walked upright. At the time, no one believed humanity originated in Africa. Most scholars thought Asia was the cradle of mankind simply because it lay between Europe and America, making migration seem logical. No evidence, just a hunch. But Dubois wasn't just guessing. He spent years digging with bare hands on the island of Java and finally unearthed something that would rewrite the story of evolution. A thick, rounded, and curved skull fragment, larger than any ape. Alongside it, a long femur, clear proof that this creature walked on 2 legs. He named it Pithecanthropus erectus, upright ape man, later reclassified as Homo erectus. But the academic world laughed at him. An ape man in Asia? Dream on. Dubois died in disappointment. His discovery was buried along with his reputation. Until half a century later, in Zhoukoudian, near Beijing, scientists unearthed dozens of ancient skulls that looked astonishingly like Java man, Peking man, Java man. Not 2 species, but one, Homo erectus. The archaeological world was stunned. For the first time, living evidence showed humans had lived in Asia over 1.5 million years ago, much earlier than anyone had imagined. But Homo erectus didn't just exist in Asia. In Part 3, we'll uncover the story of a human species that spread across 3 continents, survived every environment, and became humanity's first true conqueror. Part 3. Not just one, but a whole world of Homo erectus. Their name appears everywhere: Java, Beijing, Georgia, India, Turkey, Africa, Vietnam, Germany. From icy mountain ranges to Southeast Asian jungles, Homo erectus was a global species. This wasn't an isolated human branch. This was the first true pioneer to export humanity out of Africa. And it wasn't just a migration, it was a conquest of the world. Why did they spread so widely? 2 competing theories have battled for decades. The traditional model says Homo erectus evolved in Africa and migrated into Asia and Europe as the environment changed. The reverse migration theory argues that an ancestral human group may have first emerged in Asia, then migrated back to Africa. Fossil evidence from Dmanisi, Georgia, and Lufeng, China, has made this once radical idea impossible to ignore. Regardless of where they began, one fact is undeniable. Homo erectus was present in both Africa and Asia 1.9 million years ago. And they didn't just survive, they adapted. In Asia, smaller bodies, lighter bones. In Africa, taller, more robust builds. In Europe, bigger skulls, rougher facial features. Each region produced its own variation. In total, over 27 subspecies of Homo erectus have been recognized. This wasn't a single species. It was an evolutionary empire, lasting nearly 2 million years, spanning 3 continents. But the real question is, what made them so successful? The answer begins in part 4, when Homo erectus did the unthinkable. They started hunting the hunters. Part 4, when humans became hunters. Kenya. 1.5 million years ago, the sun scorches the savanna. A herd of antelope sprints in panic, but not because of lions. They're being hunted by humans. For millions of years, humans were walking meals. When night fell, we trembled beneath trees, trying to avoid the piercing green eyes of predators. But Homo erectus flipped the balance. They no longer waited to die. They hunted, deliberately, cooperatively, and with the courage to take on giants. Not rabbits, not rodents. They hunted hippos, dwarf elephants, rhinos, wild horses, boars, and even crocodiles. When archaeologists found the bones of large animals lying next to stone tools and ash, the message was clear. This wasn't scavenging, this was killing to eat. And it wasn't one individual, it was a team. At Illorit, Kenya, researchers discovered fossilized footprints of at least 20 Homo erectus walking in the same direction with similar size and stride. All were adult males. They weren't out for a stroll. They were on a hunt. This is the oldest evidence of a coordinated hunting group in human history. From prey, Homo erectus had become a dominant predator. For the first time, the hunted had become the hunter. But they had no claws, no fangs, and nowhere near the speed of a cheetah. So how did they win? Part 5 will show you. The body of Homo erectus was no longer that of an ape, but a biological machine optimized for endurance hunting. Part 5. The body of an endurance hunter. Midday, 40 degrees Celsius. An antelope dashes ahead, panting hard. Behind it, a Homo erectus keeps a steady pace. No fatigue, no pause, no advanced weapons, no traps. Just one deadly tool: patience. Unlike cheetahs or lions, who sprint for only a few hundred meters before giving up, Homo erectus could run for dozens of kilometers. They didn't need to be faster than their prey. They only needed to run longer. This technique is called persistence hunting, a brutal yet effective strategy. The prey panics, it runs, it dehydrates, it collapses, its body temperature spikes. Meanwhile, Homo erectus keeps moving forward. Sweat cools the body. Muscles aren't bulky, but built for endurance. Their bodies had evolved for exactly this purpose. Heights reaching up to 1.85 meters, far beyond their ancestor Homo habilis. Long legs, thick tendons, and an S-shaped spine for balance while running. Extremely dense and strong bones to absorb impact. Highly developed sweat glands. No need to pant like other predators. They were biological hunting machines, not built for speed, but for stamina. They could run until the prey collapsed from its own failing body. And if they managed to wound it early on, just a sharp stone, a single throw, then every minute of pursuit was a minute of bleeding. Their weapons? A sharpened stone, a precise throw, and a body built to wait. But hunting wasn't enough. Homo erectus wasn't just strong. They were inventive, strategic, and tool makers. In Part 6, instincts begin to take a backseat while the brain takes the lead. Part 6, Stone Tools, Rising Intelligence. A dead elephant lies on the savanna. Around it, Homo erectus used teardrop-shaped stone axes to skin, carve, and extract marrow. These aren't scavengers. They're workers, part of humanity's first primitive industry. Homo erectus didn't just hunt, they organized labor. No longer relying on random shards like Homo habilis, they now designed tools with intention, with shape, with method. This marked the Acheulean culture, a tool-making era that lasted 1.5 million years, beginning nearly 2 million years ago. Their core tools included hand axes, teardrop-shaped, sharp on both sides, butchering knives, scrapers for hides, awls for shaping wood. These weren't just for killing prey, but for logistics, skinning, marrow extraction, hide processing, sharpening sticks, maximizing every part of the animal. To create such tools, Homo erectus needed something more important than stone: a brain. Average cranial capacity, 1,030 cubic centimeters, roughly 80% the size of a modern human brain. And not just size. Their Broca's area, the brain region linked to speech, planning, and fine motor control, was developed, which means they strategized. They didn't just react. What about spears? We haven't found spears directly linked to Homo erectus, but in Germany, 400,000-year-old wooden spears have been discovered, finely crafted. The shoulder, elbow, and wrist structure of Homo erectus closely resembles modern humans, suggesting they could throw far and accurately. In other words, they could kill from a safe distance. For prey animals, being struck by a silent, upright creature from afar was a nightmare they couldn't comprehend. But intelligence wasn't only in tools. Homo erectus also collaborated. The strong went hunting, the weaker stood guard. The rest gathered and prepared resources. These were the early seeds of organized society. Part 7. The Firebringer. African Savannah. A cold night. Flames flicker at the center of a human circle. A child gathers sticks. An elder stirs the ashes to keep the coals alive. Warmth spreads through the darkness, filled with predators. This is not just fire. This is the first revolution in human history. For a long time, people believed only Homo sapiens could use fire. But discoveries at Kubifora, Kenya, Gesher Benot Yaakov, Israel, and Swartkrans, South Africa, overturned that belief. From over 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus left behind ash, charcoal, burned bones, and Acheulean tools, all together. At first, they didn't create fire. They harvested it from nature. Lightning strikes, wildfires. But unlike wild animals, Homo erectus didn't fear fire. They kept it. They used dry dung for slow-burning fuel, built windbreaks from stone, used wet wood to sustain embers through the night. And by around 400,000 years ago, clear evidence shows they could make fire themselves, regularly and widely. What did fire do for them? Cooked meat, easier digestion, better energy absorption, repelled predators. Light and smoke acted as a survival shield, provided warmth, enabling migration into cold climates. Dried and preserved meat, longer shelf life, allowing care for the sick and elderly. But most importantly, fire gave humans time to think. They no longer had to flee all day. They could sit. They could tell stories. They could pass on experience. Many anthropologists believe the first sparks of language may have ignited around the first fires. And once they had fire, Homo erectus didn't stop. They began to build shelters, make clothing, cross oceans. Art 8 is the journey to push beyond all limits, when humans first began to build their world. Art 8, the first home. Building shelters, wearing clothes, crossing seas. Cold wind sweeps across a frozen land. A small shelter made of stone, branches, and animal hides stands firm. Inside, the ashes are still warm. Stone tools are neatly arranged in a corner. And in that silent space, our ancestors sleep, huddled together. 1.7 million years ago, at Olduvai, Tanzania, archaeologists discovered a stone circle, possibly a house foundation or windbreak, not a cave. Not random. This is the earliest evidence of human-built architecture. 700,000 years ago, in Germany, Homo erectus built winter camps near glacial rivers, centered around carefully maintained hearths. By this time, they had something no one expected Homo erectus to possess: clothing. Animal hides, claws, and tendons stitched together with plant fibers. Not fashionable, not finely sewn, but enough to retain heat, block wind, and survive the cold. And then they did the unthinkable. They crossed the sea. On Flores Island, a land that has never been connected to the mainland, scientists found Homo erectus bones and stone tools. They couldn't drift there. They couldn't swim. There's only one possibility. They built rafts, navigated currents, and planned food supplies, then set out across the ocean, which means they planned months in advance, stockpiled food and fresh water, organized migration in coordinated groups. They weren't wandering nomads. They were humanity's first sailors, over 1 million years ago. But no matter how great an empire becomes, none lasts forever. Part 9 brings the end, and the unanswered question: why did a nearly perfect human species like Homo erectus vanish? Part 9. Why did they disappear? Java, 108,000 years ago, a dried-up stream. A frail old Homo erectus stands still. In front of him, no more grasslands, no large prey, only a thick, silent wall of rainforest. That was their final refuge. Across Africa, Asia, and Europe, Homo erectus had vanished. Only a small group remained, stranded on the island of Java, waiting as time slowly closed the last door. Then, the climate shifted. The grasslands they once hunted across disappeared. Dense, humid, suffocating forests took their place. Their prey, dwarf elephants, giant tortoises, went extinct, one by one. Homo erectus couldn't hunt small forest animals. They couldn't burn wet jungles. They couldn't survive beneath the dense canopy. They weren't killed. They weren't conquered. They simply no longer had a place to exist. But before they vanished, they left behind the first tools made with deliberate design, the first signs of sharing, caregiving, and compassion. Winter camps, sea-crossing rafts, and children who lived thanks to their communities. And most of all, they left behind a lesson in resilience. If you believe Homo erectus deserves to be remembered, share this video and leave a comment. What do you think truly ended Homo erectus? Climate change, evolutionary limits, or their own success? Don't forget to subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows, where we unearth forgotten memories of ancestors whose names are no longer in our textbooks. Homo erectus wasn't wiped out by war, not by disease, not by invasion. They died in silence because the world around them changed and they couldn't keep up. And today, we, Homo sapiens, are walking the same razor's edge. Climate is shifting, technology is exploding, social tension is spreading. Are we heading down the same path Homo erectus once took? Not because we're weak, but because we might be too confident in past success. They survived for nearly 2 million years. We've only been here for 300,000. If there's one thing we must learn from them, it's this: survival doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to those who can change at the right time. If you believe the stories of our ancestors aren't just tales, but warnings for the present, subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows. Because the more people understand, the fewer mistakes get repeated. And if you believe Homo erectus deserves to be remembered, share this video so that their memory, long buried, might awaken again in the minds of those who watch. Comment below if Homo erectus were still alive today. What would they think of the world we're building?